I found a kitchen magnet that has an M on it, and it plays Hail to the Victory.
Welcome to MGoRadio. I'm gonna say 5.12.
12. Let's just call it 12.
5.12. We are live from
game. Yeah.
we are live from the Bow Store on Main Street, and we will get to a stirring conversation about Michigan's victory in Atlantis after our first segment, which is about the 1969 Ohio State game. We have a very special guest, Robin Wright, who covered that game for the Daily before going on to be a world-renowned journalist, something no Ohio State person has ever said. But 1969 is not my wheelhouse. It is Seth's wheelhouse. It is Dr. Sapp's wheelhouse. So I'm going to turn this segment over to them and let them weave their tales.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, Robin.
Great to be with you.
Hi, Robin.
Go Blue.
This is quite a treat for us, let me tell you. So you got to go in the locker room. No, you didn't get to go in the locker room, did you?
No, I never got to go in the Michigan locker room. That was the deal I did with the team. They would save things for me if I didn't go in the locker room, and I didn't really want to go in anyway, especially back in the 1960s. But I got I scooped all the big sports writers, and so it was a fair trade.
Well, is that because, Robin, you were a woman, or was it because you were the only woman covering the team?
A woman had never been in the locker room, as far as I know, and they didn't want me there. So Bo also did a deal with me that he would meet me outside the locker room, and he talked to me. So week after week, I got lots of exclusive insights into what was his thinking, his planning, and what the players were thinking too.
Wow,
that's so cool. And then something, the Rose Bowl that year. I know we're jumping way ahead, but something happened with them. The whole press box was going to walk out for you.
No, what happened was because the team had always been so good to me, they kept me in the loop about what was happening. And that morning, I was the only reporter who knew that Bo, in his first year of coaching, and the first, taking what had been a mediocre team the year before, taking them to the championship and the Rose Bowl, had had a heart attack. And when I got to the press box, as I had in Ann Arbor and plenty of other press boxes in the Big Ten, the sheriff's deputies told me that they only allowed female food distributors and female teletype operators, but no female journalists, to my astonishment. And so I sent a note into my male colleagues and said, well, I had the story of the day, but alas, I couldn't share it with them because they wouldn't let me in. And the boys all knew that I got good stories, so they got up and walked out. And the Rose Bowl was worried about airing the game. And so they finally let me in. So I broke the gender barrier at the Rose Bowl.
Wow, that's incredible.
I'd like to think that it was because the men were altruistic, but I think they also didn't want to miss a scoop.
Well, all right. So we fast forward. Let's rewind.
Okay.
Let's rewind back to 1969.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so I worked on the Daily. I know it's hard to work your way up. How did you get that gig in the first place?
Oh, well, it was a total accident. I didn't have any interest in journalism, and in fact, I did a history degree while I was at Michigan. But one of my roommates at Michigan was going off to join the Daily and kept insisting, "Oh, you should come along." And so I went with her, and we listened to the politics editor and the Michigan state editor. I mean the state of Michigan, not Michigan state, and kind of local editor and so forth. And then I heard the sports editor, and I thought, ding dong, that's for me, because my father, who was on the law faculty, had only girls, and I, as the first child, was his substitute son. And he schlepped me to every Michigan football, basketball, and baseball game. So I realized this was a moment I could get revenge on my father, that I would write one article on sports and surprise him. And, of course, the joke was on me because I loved it, and I ended up working my way through the ranks and becoming a sports editor. And even though I still consider myself a chronicler of contemporary history, journalism became my life, and it all came because of Michigan football more than anything else.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was incredible. So you started writing in '68 on the football team, right?
No, I started late 66, maybe 67.
Oh, okay. So you got to start writing about the football. I didn't even notice that before. I'm sorry.
You weren't born then.
No, I wasn't.
Right.
No, I go through the daily archives, and I was, I did a little search of Robin Wright in there. but like you're, I mean, so but my point was you were there for like the transition. You get to see the bump teams and the '68 team, which was a lot better than people I think recognize. And then the devastating loss at Ohio, 50-14. And then, I mean, what was the feeling on campus like? What did people at Michigan think about their football team around that time?
Well, at the end of the '68 season, we were all devastated, and it was such a humiliating loss. And when Bump decided to take a bigger job, and Michigan started looking for a coach, we all wondered who was going to step in. And here was this guy that nobody in Ann Arbor had ever heard of, who had a name that was largely unpronounceable. And he came from Miami of Ohio. And here we were, a great Big Ten school, and it was all kind of, what's going on? What were they thinking? And his record was good, but it wasn't all that impressive, 40-17-3. And so there was a lot of concern about was Bo Schembechler going to be able to continue the great Michigan tradition.
Right.
And Bo surprised everybody. He really did. We had a couple of really bad losses that season to Missouri and to Michigan State.
Right.
But he managed to pull off the upset of the century in college football.
Right.
And here was a guy who also, given the times, the 1960s, this was a moment of the anti-war movement, civil rights movement, the first real protests on campus, women's rights. And here was a guy who came in and talked about despising long hair and training in the military tradition. And so this was kind of all anathema to the atmosphere at Michigan at the time.
Was he as charismatic, Robin, that first year? I'd heard stories that he wasn't as charismatic those first few years. He was all about discipline and regimen. But was he like that with you, or what was his overall demeanor back in '69?
So I think Bo was trying to prove himself. And he was a tough guy. He'd come up in the Woody Hayes school, and it was all, he didn't like to take risks. He was trying to impose his leadership on a team that had very cordial relations with Bump, who was a warm, fuzzy guy,
right,
in comparison to Bo. And
well, so are a lot of people.
Yeah, well, that's true. But, it's also true that people after heart surgery also become a little warmer and fuzzier, and I know that because of my own father. And I think Bo, who actually consulted with my father before his own first heart surgery, also became much more mellow over time.
Okay.
He was good to me all of my life, and even though he was horrified to think there was a female who was covering football. I mean, truly horrified.
Wow.
And he wrote about it.
What was his response when they're like, okay, welcome to Michigan. By the way, 5'1" female sports reporter from the student paper wants to talk to you.
Well, he recorded it in his book, He said, what the hell am I going to do about it? But the fun part of it all was we came to terms with each other, and and he ultimately took credit for toughening me up so that for every war zone I was ever in. What he didn't know is that my father really was far more of an influence on that. But Bo, every time I came back to see my parents in Ann Arbor, would always take me to lunch or dinner, and it was fun, having that friendship over the years.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, when I was researching my story here, I stumbled across your headline from the Daily, and I wanted to ask you about the title of your column called Broadside. Now, how did that happen, and did you have anything to do with that, and how did you feel about that?
Well, I did actually, and at the time we all had titles for our columns, and when you were senior at that time anyway, we all got columns, and I was looking for something, being the first female, that would distinguish what I was writing from the boys. I wanted noted that I was an equal, and so at the time it was funny, it was clever,
Sure.
broadside.
Right.
Now I couldn't get away with it; it wouldn't be politically correct. But it also came back to haunt me. I was lecturing once at the Army War College, and someone asked me about what experience I had as a foreign correspondent, and I said, well, I was abroad for over 20 years, and they all burst out laughing, and I couldn't figure out what was so funny, and I finally realized what I'd said, and they thought I was being clever, and with a double entendre, and of course, I was really trying to say I had been overseas for over 20 years.
Right.
Yeah, she wrote a column called Broadside. I'm sure the Navy guys loved that one.
So as I read the column, I had searched. I'd spoken with Jim Young. I'd spoken with Jerry Hanlon because I wanted to get a coach's perspective on the '69 game. But and there's obviously videos of Bo and stories. But I wanted to see if he had actually come out and said that they could beat Ohio State, and that's what you led your column off. And that was just astounding to me because that was the first time I had seen that. And was there a big reaction when you got that sort of nugget, or was that sort of just a matter-of-fact delivery on Bo's part?
Well, you have to remember that he also said in that interview that he had no great new plans for the game,
right,
and that it'd be a nose-to-nose, man-to-man game, and that he had nothing special for Ohio State. So that didn't give you a whole lot of confidence.
Right.
But I think that his sense of determination, that this was not kind of propaganda, that he really believed that Ohio State could be beat. And to be honest with you, I think Ohio State can be beat this year too.
Sure.
It'll take an enormous amount of whether it's luck or hard work, but the combination we did it before, we can do it again. So you may hear me all the way from Washington, D.C. shouting, come on, guys.
Right.
Robin, how did you, obviously you've cared about the team long since after college. In your career, and your career has gone to a lot of places, how did you follow the team? Like when you're in Johannesburg or you're in...
all around the world.
Yeah, or with the Pope.
So there was a great story for the 1977 game when we were playing Ohio State. And it was in the midst of the first Black Mass uprising in South Africa. And it had gone on for more than a year. And the foreign correspondents all shared a suite of offices because in those days we had to file by telex. Everyone had to punch their tapes to have their stories transmitted. This is pre-computer, pre-internet, pre-everything. And I shared an office with the Associated Press correspondent. I then worked for the Washington Post, and he had graduated from Ohio State, and we were friends 364 days of the year.
Love it.
And so we were both in the office filing that day, and I said to him, we always made a tradition of not speaking to each other during that day, and I said to him at one point, I've got to find out what the score is. And I knew the press box number, so I put a call through to find out what the score was.
Oh, my gosh.
And they told me. But it was only halftime. and with the time difference, I'd miscalculated. But my mother later told me that the announcer came over the loudspeaker right after I called and said, "There's such international interest in this game. We've just had a call from Johannesburg, South Africa." And my mother wrote me and she said, "I knew it was you. I knew."
Well, who else could call into the press box from Johannesburg?
But, I find Michigan graduates and Michigan fanatics in every corner of the world. One of my favorite stories is from Mozambique. I was there for independence in 1975, and I'd come down. It was the end of a very long civil war and 400 years of European colonialism, and they're about to become independent. And I was the first correspondent in, and I rented an apartment. And I went to get a phone, and in the old days when you had a clunky black phone, they had to have a landline. Mm-hmm. And I went to the Post and Telecommunications office, and they said, "Oh, no, sorry, we can't give you a phone. The waiting list is 9 years long." And God only knows how they calculated in years, but, I worked through every supervisor and director, et cetera, until I finally got to the last one, and they kept saying, no. And as I was leaving, it occurred to me that the guy spoke with an American accent, not the kind of South African English accent, because Mozambique's right next to South Africa, and it was a Portuguese colony at the time, but many spoke English. And the top man in the office had an American accent. So I said to him, "You must have been in the United States. Did you go to school there?" And he said yes. And of course, he'd gone to Michigan. So when I told him that I was an Ann Arbor girl, born, bred, educated, and forever loyal, he looked at me skeptically and said, "If you can sing Hail to the Victors, I'll give you a phone."
Oh, my God.
So I stood on a chair and I belted out Hail to the Victors. And he not only gave me a phone, I never got a phone bill. And when I left Mozambique to move to another part of Africa, I turned in my clunky black phone and said I hadn't received a bill, and this is my forwarding address, and I never got a phone bill all these years later.
Wow, what a story! Wow,
that's great. So, I mean, you've gone a lot of places after that. What's the how do some of the people you met compare to Bo Schembechler? Because he's we're probably a provincial town here. It's hard to imagine, what's Bo like compared to Pope John Paul II? What's Bo compared to? You've met all these people.
Presidents.
Yeah.
Yes, almost every president. I've traveled or interviewed almost every president since Jimmy Carter and every Secretary of State since Henry Kissinger. And I traveled with John Paul II, but I've also interviewed a lot of the bad guys, Idi Amin and Muammar Gaddafi, and I knew Yasser Arafat both when he was the world's leading terrorist and after he made peace with Israel. Look, Bo is one of those characters that sticks with you for your life, and he was a character. He, as I say, I think he evolved a lot from as he became more confident as a coach, had a winning record, that he could stand up to his mentor Woody Hayes and say, "I beat you, buddy." Mm-hmm. That didn't mean he was any less of a disciplinarian or less demanding in his standards, but I think he also was more willing to sometimes show his human side, and I think that was also because he married comparatively later in life and had a child. Mm-hmm. And I think family gave him something, and he really started his family in Ann Arbor.
Right.
So, look, Bo Schembechler became Michigan football, and that's saying a lot for a guy who none of us thought amounted to very much when he came to Ann Arbor.
Right. Well, when I wrote the story, and I remember telling Seth, when I saw your headline, I told Seth, this is months ago, I said, "Seth, I'm going to reach out to Robin Wright, and we're going to talk to her." And Seth says, no, don't talk to her. She will not want.
No, I said she's a little bigger than you think.
Right. But
because I've been in the Michigan Daily and seen your name was on a plaque, I think, when I was there, as like one of the great graduates of Michigan. You know, we have the guy who wrote Death of a Salesman, and then we have the lady
Arthur Miller. His name is Arthur Miller. Come on, Seth.
I know who Arthur Miller is.
So listen, I just wanted
Making
to
a comparison.
I
here.
just wanted to thank you for taking my call or responding, because it's a thrill for us, certainly for me, but I know Seth is just super excited, and we're all excited to chat with you today.
Well, I'm honored to be with you. I mean, I'm still an Ann Arbor girl, born, bred, educated. I will be a Go Blue fan. I have a big Go Blue football party tomorrow at my house, all Michigan grads. And as I say, you may hear us from there.
Awesome.
I was sorely tempted to come to this game a half century after the historic upset.
Oh.
And I think it'll be a great game tomorrow. I just hope it's not another 50-14.
I don't think so.
I think
Ohio
that was
State,
last year.
Ohio State is a great team, but I also remember that for the 1969 game, I can't remember if it was Bo or whether it was a sports announcer who said that the only team that could beat Ohio State was the Minnesota Vikings,
Yep.
a team that later went on to play in the Super Bowl.
Correct.
That they were that good.
Right.
But I think Bo, when he talked about Ohio State can be beat, Ohio State today can be beat.
Yep.
Will we beat it? Let's hope.
Yeah. Well, next time you're back home in Ann Arbor, look Seth and I up. We'd love to have a coffee with you.
Wonderful. Go Blue, guys.
Go Blue. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
Ciao.
All right, we're going to take a break and come back, and we got to talk about that basketball game.
Yep.
Let me just tell you a couple things to keep in your mind while you're out there. When we take the field, we're going to win. We've got big goals. We've got big ideas. We've got to win this game, and there is no game on the remainder of our schedule more important than the one you're going down to the tunnel to play today. Now let's go. Let's go.
Underground Printing is proud to present the Bow Store. Visit us at our new location at 333 South Main or online at www.bow.team.
It's painless, it's online, it's group ordering made easy for your next custom printed apparel order. Pogo from Underground Printing takes the aggravation out of custom printing for a group. Whether you're selling shirts for a fundraiser, organizing a large event, or trying to collect sizes and payment for a family reunion, Underground Printing is here to help. Save time and hassle every step of the way with our easy-to-use site. No more guessing what to order, chasing people down to pay, or wasting time trying to sort out who needs what. We'll set it up and you can just sit back and relax. We can even take care of individual shipping. To learn more about Pogo, visit us at any of our convenient locations or at pogo.undergroundshirts.com.
The University of Michigan was the place we all came together. It's where we pursued our curiosities and where we rallied around things that really mattered. The Alumni Association has now made it possible for you to reconnect with your fellow Wolverines around endless topics within alumni online communities. It's where you can join in the discussion or start your own on any subject from your career, identity, hobbies, or interests. Go to umalumni.com/communities and keep the conversation going.
Are you planning a business trip, a Michigan reunion, or a revenge tour in Ann Arbor and don't want to be stuck out by I-94? Look no further than the Residence Inn Ann Arbor downtown. Positioned at the corner of Huron and Ashley, the hotel is just a block from Main Street and a short walk to Michigan Stadium and Central Campus with all the amenities you expect. Also, we podcast here most Sunday mornings, so if you let us know you're coming, we'll let you put a shout out on the pod. That's the Residence Inn Ann Arbor downtown.
Recently, Seth and I were having lunch, and he asked me what someone in their 30s married with children should be doing with their finances. I rattled off some gibberish, and then he said, that's what your next ad should be. So here we go. Hey, it's Nick Hopwood, your MGO financial coach. I'm a certified financial planner, founder, and president at
Peak Wealth Management.
And it would be smart for you to start paying close attention at this point. I think you would want to consider the following. Max out your 401k. I like the Roth 401k. As long as your income is under $415,000 per year. Max out your Roth IRA. Set up your mortgage on a 15-year amortization. Add $500 a month for each kid's $529. Invest with the appropriate risk tolerance. Make sure you have enough life insurance to cover debts, education, and income replacement. Don't take out any credit card debt. Pay all your bills each month. Make sure you have an emergency fund. And if your needs are any more complicated than that, connect with us at peakwm.com to book an appointment.
Peak Wealth Management.
Retire with confidence.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 5.12.
Officially now.
Yes, you might want to unmute Ace.
Let
Do we have Ace on the phone?
I'm here.
Hey,
I
how
wasn't
you
even
doing,
planning
Ace?
on being awake right now, but I am running on pure adrenaline at the moment.
Which you certainly won't pay for later.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So we weren't initially planning on having a basketball segment on this podcast, but after 3 wins in 3 days in Atlantis, which always sounds like the stupidest thing to say is a place.
Yeah, after 3 days in a ballroom in Atlantis.
It's like famous for not existing.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, we were just in Atlantis. 2 of those over North Carolina and Gonzaga, top 10 teams. We're pretty much obligated to talk about our sponsors, which are, of course, our presenting sponsors, the Bow Store and Underground Printing, our associate sponsors, Homeshire Lending, the Residents in Ann Arbor Downtown, the University of Michigan Alumni Association, Peak Wealth Management, Human Element, Michigan Law Grad, the Phil Klein Insurance Group, Fuego Bucks, Ann Arbor Elder Law, Perrin Brewing, and The Athletic. Very smooth.
Here we go. That was perfectly done.
All right, Ace, we've
that
just
before.
watched Michigan against 3 quality opponents, games that were at one point at least 15 points in Michigan's favor deep into the second half. I mean, what is there a roof on this season anymore?
I'm not really ready to say there is one at the moment. I mean, I can't believe the team is already at this point given, they just worked Franz Wagner into the lineup during this tournament. They're working in relatively new systems on both sides. And for me, what stood out the most was the defensive performance all the way through this tournament, because Michigan forces North Carolina and Cole Anthony into being like a mid-range jump shooting team, and then turn right around and force Gonzaga to choose between being a mid-range shooting team, which they kind of turned down, and instead they turned into a let's take really difficult shots in the post team. And neither of those ways proves particularly effective, and now Michigan has what appears to be a lot of shooters surrounding a dominant big man in John Teskey, and this could not be a better start to the season.
Yeah, I mean, 2 things kind of jump out to me. One, you mentioned the shooting. Probably not sustainable at these levels, but every time one of these shots goes down, your expectations for Michigan's ability to maintain it at some level that's towards the tops in the country goes up. And second, there's still a lot of low-hanging fruit for this team. So you mentioned Franz, but also Xavier Simpson's turnover rate is still at 25%, even after just 3 in the last 2 games. He's the number 2 assist guy in the country in assist rate, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 possessions every game where they just kind of look around and don't know what they're really doing yet.
Yeah.
So they're still going through these transition costs, and they just blew the doors off UNC and Gonzaga.
Yeah, I mean, it's we got, especially in the Iowa State game, moments where it seemed like Simpson just kind of lost his mind. And, that some of that is new systems, some of that is getting used to playing at a higher tempo. And over the last 2 games, he was in absolute control. And in addition to that, he is now, I'm not fully ready to believe in the 3-point shot yet, but he is now becoming effective enough that when guys go under screens, he has made them pay. And that was enough to set up. He had a legitimate 3-point pump fake that got a defender to bite that also led to his left-handed hook shot over a 6'10" dude in the Gonzaga game. So he's got room to improve. I'm not sure he'll shoot like 66% on 2s for the entire year, but he's got room to come down significantly on the shooting front and still be a remarkably efficient point guard.
Well, the fact that
meanwhile, like you've got Livers looking like an absolute killer, and that looks quite sustainable.
Yeah, and the fact that it's not just X doing the things that he did last year and having better results, right? He's developing a legitimate ability to go left against high-level competition.
He had a left-handed hook shot this game.
I mean, he had left. I mean, yeah.
It's the one thing we've been begging for.
But it's also something where he's been able to snake to his left a few different times in every game and finish there. So that does imply that the diversity he's got in his game now will make him a more effective player at the hoop. So I think that 66% isn't sustainable, but an improvement on last year certainly is. And then, we have to talk about Eli Brooks.
Yeah, that's where I want to go with this, because Matt from Endless Motors in our Slack chat, and just like he kind of like UFRing games as we're watching them. He's all about this guy, and he is
as a defender. I mean, aside the fact that he's shooting like 45% from three this year.
Right. He's just playing out of his mind right now, and it's one of the things we didn't even think was possible for this team, and that just gives them such a higher ceiling.
So they had the Cole Anthony highlight package, and at that point, Eli Brooks was out dueling Cole Anthony, and what a world we're in. I don't think there's ever been a Michigan player to go from where Brooks was last year to where Brooks is this year over such a short period of time.
It's a DJ Wilson-like transformation. That's the only comparison I can think of. And with Wilson, there was a little bit more just like you could see the apparent physical potential. And Eli Brooks does not stand out like DJ Wilson as a physical specimen, but he's been the secondary ball handler that Michigan needs. Xavier Simpson ran into foul trouble against North Carolina. I believe he only played 17 minutes in that game.
Yep.
And Eli Brooks goes for 39 minutes, 24 points, 5 from 8 on twos, 4 of 6 on threes. And even though he doesn't have an assist in that game, he handles the offense well, especially when paired with David DeJulius. That backcourt has been quite nice. And he's been an amazing defender. He was one of the people helping kind of make life hard on Cole Anthony. And Gonzaga's guards got nothing today. So, this team is tough to score on inside, but it doesn't look like it's very easy to get much on the perimeter against them either.
He's also been kind of developing a little bit of the Rockman late shot. He'll go to the basket and get something. And Michigan's not had a lot of good ideas during bad idea time.
Well, it's still his floater, and his floater is going down now, but I do feel like...
Hey, Cassius Winston can do it.
Okay, that's true.
It's possible. He's the same size guy.
The late clock, it's really Simpson who I think is the guy who's emerged as like a late clock threat, both to actually get a shot himself, but to set up Livers, because Livers, he doesn't need much space anymore. Like the ability for Michigan to drive halfway into the lane, drive just like a step below the free throw line, and then kick out to a guy who's nominally covered, who's nominally got a closeout, and to knock down those shots at a high rate. It looks fairly sustainable. That's really encouraging for the future.
Well, and the other thing is they are not facing many late clock situations in the first place. The offense, if you want to see like a sign of an offense that's absolutely humming along, everybody in the rotation other than Eli Brooks and Franz, who just jumped in there, is shooting 60% on twos.
Wow.
Which is, I guess Brandon Johns was at 57%, if you wanted to pick.
No.
Obviously when you've got a point guard with a 50% assist rate, that's quite helpful, but they're not getting into that many situations where they even have to face these difficult late clock situations, because they're both getting out early on the break, and they've been really good at picking their spots at that. And they're running these NBA actions where they tend to get a quality shot in the first 24 seconds of the shot clock, and they're rarely getting to those last 6 seconds.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like in the second half of games where Michigan has a big lead, they definitely slow it down and it feels like a beeline team.
Right. It's like, well,
and previously it's like, all right, well, you got a good shot. There it goes.
And they're passing up shots late, and then I feel like, we're up 12. I'm not used to being up 12 on Gonzaga.
Well, how many guys have had open looks and they haven't pulled the trigger this year? Like, that was a pretty consistent issue last year, and now, Brooks gets a shot, it's going up. Livers gets a shot, it's going up. DDJ gets a shot, it's going up. Even Teskey.
That was going to happen anyway.
Yeah, I know. But Teskey really started scuffling early in the season from three, and in this tournament, he initiated Michigan runs with big three-pointers from the top of the key on pick and pop.
Yeah, he sure did. And him just scraping above 30% provides a really dangerous aspect to this offense, because there's just, especially if Simpson is hitting shots when you go under screens on him, there's not a lot of good ways to defend that pick and roll.
No, especially with the ability of Simpson to create shots for other folks when you actually play it straight up. So, and then, if you look at Michigan's defensive fingerprint on KenPom, it screams you can have 2-point jumpers. So they're 300th in forcing turnovers. They're 5th, I think, at preventing assists, and they're 11th at preventing three-pointers. So all of those shots are unassisted mid-range jumpers that are usually not very good.
Well, Dylan Barnhart posted a thing on Twitter.
Burkhart.
Did I say Barnhart?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Dylan Burkhart posted a thing on Twitter before that end of the game craziness where they were
the UNC game.
During the UNC game when UNC was just scoring like crazy at the very end. And it's just downright pornographic. There's just it shows how they're shooting in at the rim and how they're shooting at threes, and they're two red boxes. And then, because they're just defending it so well, and then there's just massive box in the middle of long twos that they're taking because that's all their shots.
Yeah, I tweeted out something about the fact that 80% of their shots were 2-point jumpers, and then Burkhart tweeted that, and it was literally 75% of their shots at that point were 2-point jumpers. And Cole Anthony was canning them, but nobody else on that team can. And then how many other teams in the NCAA are at all stacked with mid-range jump shooters? Nobody. Michigan State, maybe. That's it.
Yeah, you might have to switch things up against Cassius Winston. Otherwise, this is going to work. And even against Cassius Winston, Carolina, Cole Anthony had a pretty solid game. He goes 6 for 10 on twos. Most of his three-point misses were sort of late in the game. He was relatively efficient all the way through, but when that's the best shot you're getting in your offense, it is really difficult to keep up with this team right now.
Yeah, and then when you try to press it closer to the basket, you have Teskey blocking shots. Even when Castleton's in there, he's an excellent shot blocker. You have Livers chipping in, and Michigan, it kind of felt like they got the short end of some refereeing stuff, especially in Game 2, where Simpson fouls out in questionable fashion, I'd say. And
yeah, taking an elbow to the chest is a tough way to get your fist.
Yeah, I woke up the baby. The baby was sleeping next to me, and then the baby was not sleeping next to me and was displeased. So we were both displeased in that moment. But I feel like if they get a little bit more of a consistent whistle when it comes to block and charge, there's even another level for this defense to go to.
And this was tournament in Bahamas. When they get into the Big Ten, they get a lot more used to how they play the game and how everyone's defending. And I don't think you're going to see Simpson foul out, more than once or twice more this season.
Has he ever fouled out?
And Simpson's also trying to do a lot out there. You've got Wagner kind of just getting his feet wet. He's still making a decent number of mistakes on defensive end. He's making up for it a little bit because he's long and kind of crafty and can get his hands in passing lanes. So he's come up with his steals, but positionally he's not that sound yet. But he's so big, and he's played high-level ball that I imagine he's going to improve pretty quickly in that regard. And Michigan's now up to 9th in the country in defense already, and that's with a lot of preseason expectations that were lower than that still baked in.
I've lost track of the times where there's a sea of arms going for a rebound or something, and I think that it's Castleton, and no, it's Wagner.
Yeah, Wagner had the deflection on an attempted entry pass that then doinked off a Gonzaga player for a turnover. And, like, he might not have the lateral agility to keep up with everybody, but that length is going to keep him in virtually every drive that he faces.
And, like, when you go to shoot, I mean, this has been the entire tournament. There's just so many people who can put their arms out. Like, Johns has gotten a whole I've never seen a Michigan team block like this, at least, since Beeline.
Yeah, I mean, they are much more aggressive on the defensive end. I mean, in parts, right? So the drop coverage is less aggressive than a flat hedge.
Right.
They're letting you have a two-pointer, but if you approach the basket, like, that is going to be heavily contested.
You're in a forest, and like that's one of the things they've been getting from Castleton this year. Like, they don't have to have Teskey out there running it all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
get that guy in there and get
his
the same
first
kind of
couple
performance.
games were a little awkward, and then since then he's really improved, I think, in his positioning, and it's still a little bit nervy when Teskey's not on the floor, but like the first couple games, the Creighton game, it was like, we got to get Teskey back out there.
Yeah.
And in this tournament, it felt pretty much fine to have Castleton on the floor.
Yeah, I was not nervous at all, really, about the Gonzaga game when he was spelling Teskey. I think both of them have done a much better job with that drop coverage over the last few games, and now Michigan's up to they're top 100 in block rate, which is not something I'm used to seeing when looking at Michigan's KenPom page, because you're also getting some secondary blocking from Brandon Johnson, pretty decent as a weak side guy.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy how much the combination of how well they're playing and how much better they could conceivably play. Wagner, you can see how pretty his shot is. He's only made 3 of 9 threes so far, but he's going to be somebody who probably, ends up in that 40% range, at least as a spot-up shooter. And he had a couple nice takes in this game, in the last couple games, where he's not necessarily finishing them off, but you can see where he's going to be a good secondary option on this team.
Yeah, he did have one where he spun to the basket, so not a straight line drive, got to the rim, got a layup, and it was like, wow, that seemed easy. And he just needs to get his feet wet, kind of get settled, figure out what his role is, and then, yeah, he looks like he's going to be a really efficient and, just a very difficult player to deal with at both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to handle 6'9" at the 3, and that's where he's playing most of his minutes. They got away with playing him. They put him in at the 4 a little bit, and he was able to stop Gonzaga's backup big. So, I mean, he's showing a little bit of positional versatility, a surprising amount of strength, and I suspect the offensive skill stuff will come along pretty darn quickly too.
Yeah, and we'll get more into the weeds about each particular game this weekend, and also start talking about Louisville a little bit. But entering this season, we're like, all right, let's try to make the tournament. Let's stay off the bubble if we can.
Let's
and
get ISU in the preseason and then get to the Big Ten.
Right, and now it's it's a little bit of a different situation. Now it's like, if you can beat Louisville, and who's to say that that's not a
possibility?
possibility?
Get really interesting from there.
Right, like.
Things
Man.
get really, really interesting from there. And I mean, with the way they're playing, it is tough to put much past them right now. They look really, really good on both ends of the floor.
They do, and they still have a lot of transition costs that they're deleting
and
daily.
The Big Ten doesn't look – I mean, the kings of the Big Ten don't look like they're
Ohio State
solid.
looks a lot better than some people projected, including myself. I didn't know that Caleb Wesson had lost 35 pounds. Helps.
That's kind of a game changer, yeah.
That would have been really good to know, because I feel like I underrated Ohio State too. I was a lot higher on Wesson.
So Michigan State, though, does not look like the world beater that they were supposed to be preseason, and now it looks like it's a fairly open Big Ten between, 2, 3, 4 teams. All right. So
you got Maryland in there and maybe Purdue, and Michigan is right there.
Yeah. Yep. All right, we got to take a break. Thanks for joining us, Ace. We'll definitely get more detail in on Sunday.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me burn off some of this adrenaline.
Yeah, no problem. Take a nap.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Why do you do what you do? I grew up in the small town of Hazlitt, Michigan, and I witnessed great people I care about making a lot of poor financial decisions. I thought to myself, I never want to be in that position, putting my retirement at risk. Now we want to make sure that your retirement is not at risk. And by providing education and guidance, we inspire our clients to make great decisions, putting them on a path to be able to retire with confidence. I'm Nick Hopwood, CFP, president and founder at
Peak Wealth Management.
And that's my why.
Peak Wealth Management.
Retire with confidence.
In southeastern Michigan, the yearly cost for a nursing home averages
$110,000.
It doesn't have to, though. Reed McCarthy founded Ann Arbor Elder Law after handling a tricky situation for his own family. Years of experience later, his boutique firm works with clients across southeast Michigan, dealing with Medicaid planning, long-term care, and tax, disability, and family law, not to mention family dynamics. If you have a family member who may need that level of care, or if you're ready to start your own estate plan, Reed can give you a plan for the future. Visit AnnArborElderLaw.com or call 734-945-9693. That's 734-945-9693.
Want the perfect game day outfit? Underground Printing has unique, great-fitting apparel and officially licensed apparel from legendary Michigan names like Woodson, Howard, Schembeckler, Ufer, and more. UGP also specializes in custom-printed apparel and promotional items for groups, events, and businesses. Whether you need one shirt as a gift or 1,000 shirts for a charity walk, Underground can customize almost anything for groups large or small. To learn more, visit Underground Printing at one of our 3 convenient locations around Ann Arbor or online at undergroundshirts.com.
Are you planning a business trip, a Michigan reunion, or a revenge tour in Ann Arbor and don't want to be stuck out by I-94? Look no further than the Residence Inn Ann Arbor downtown. Positioned at the corner of Huron and Ashley, the hotel is just a block from Main Street and a short walk to Michigan Stadium and Central Campus with all the amenities you expect. Also, we podcast here most Sunday mornings, so if you let us know you're coming, we'll let you put a shout out on the pod. That's the Residence Inn Ann Arbor downtown.
Say, do you like clickbait? Do you like articles that take about 5 minutes and zero knowledge to write? Well, you listen to this podcast and you probably read MGoBlog, which means you don't, and it's probably time to get that Athletic subscription. I'm going to get you 40% off. Just listen in. The Athletic is a subscription-based sports news site delivering in-depth sports coverage for diehard fans. You read exclusive stories on Michigan football by Nick Baumgartner and Austin Meek, Michigan basketball by Brendan Quinn, national stories from writers you know like Bruce Feldman, Stuart Mandel, and Seth Davis. There's no ads, no pop-ups, no clickbait. The Athletic is setting a new standard for sports news coverage. You can join today for Wolverines content you won't find anywhere else and get 40% off your annual subscription by going to theathletic.com/MGoBlog. Again, that's athletic.com/MGoBlog.
The University of Michigan was the place we all came together. It's where we pursued our curiosities and where we rallied around things that really mattered. The Alumni Association has now made it possible for you to reconnect with your fellow Wolverines around endless topics within alumni online communities. It's where you can join in the discussion or start your own on any subject from your career, identity, hobbies, or interests. Go to umalumni.com/communities and keep the conversation going.
Welcome back. Did you unmute me?
I thought
All right.
I thought we were unmuted.
All right,
Are you
lovely.
around?
Welcome back to MGoRadio 5.12. We're still live at the Bow Store, despite Seth's best efforts. And now we have to take one last look back at the Indiana game. We welcome in a special guest, Thomas Guynes.
Close enough, Guynes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So
you had to watch a little like more early '90s Michigan football to hear it pronounced correctly.
Offensive lineman under
came in under Mo, left under Lloyd.
Yeah. So a guy who knows his way around a line block, which is interesting for me because that's probably, the weakest part of I didn't play offensive line, so when I grade a player, I'm just grading what happened. and not what should have happened.
I can dig it.
So one thing that's really jumped out to me about this year's team is that particularly the interior offensive line, their pass protection is at a level that I haven't seen in quite a long time.
So what I would say about all of that is this: comparatively to last year, the thing that drove me absolutely bananas was the fact that we would get beat by the same twist ad nauseum.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was a simple TE stunt. The the 3 technique will bounce outside with the looping defensive end coming back around up the A or B gap. So we've done a lot better as far as learning how to take the proper sets for that, pass that off, and to keep that pocket from collapsing or either from letting guys come straight up the middle between that A or B gap. So we've definitely done a lot better job in that sense. My biggest continued gripe is that we're not changing the line of scrimmage on the run plays. Seems we're getting a lot of position blocking instead of driving guys off the ball. We show signs of it at times, and that's the part that drives me nuts, is the fact that we can do it, but the level of consistency isn't there.
Do you wonder if some of that has to do with the RPO game? Because you have 3 yards, and then once you get to 3 yards, it's
lineman downfield.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think there's just been some cultural changes in offensive line play as far as blocking schemes, how things are being coached up right now. I've had conversation with guys that were recently in the NFL or still very close to the NFL, and just having conversation with those guys. And, because I've seen a lot of same mistakes on Sundays, on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday.
Okay.
So I think the level of physicality that has been taken out of the game, especially on the pro level, to me is what I'm seeing. I think, at least when I played on the collegiate side of things, we mirrored a lot of things in which the pros were doing. So when I was in school, we couldn't weigh 300 pounds. Why? Because Denver Broncos had that smaller offensive line. They were doing all that zone blocking. So I think we're just mirroring some of the things that the pros are doing. But with that being said, just because the pros are doing, at least from what I'm seeing, I mean, I played here and I played in every league you can play in and get a paycheck. Just because the pros are doing it doesn't necessarily mean that it's better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, especially now, you have pretty strict limitations on contact to the pros.
Exactly, and as far as a lineman goes, that's your bread and butter. The contact, the physicality, I've always go back to that football is a gladiatorial sport. It is what it is. This is what you signed up for. It's an inherently dangerous game. And the reason why I personally like all of that, because by the time I get to maybe about a quarter way through that third quarter and I've been beating the brakes off of those defensive linemen up front, they start to slow down. And the game for me now gets easier. So I have to practice like that in order to hone those particular techniques. But I think more importantly, it's just the mindset of just going out there and just mugging guys. I'm not down at the football building. I don't know how these guys are practicing right now. I'm just saying I'm not necessarily seeing that level of physicality consistently.
Are there other offensive lines that you see around the country that execute that level?
I thought Wisconsin was. I mean, Wisconsin has basically, in my opinion, taking the reins from us as being offensive line university. I definitely like what they were doing. I love, they always had big athletic guys, and they used that to their advantage. When you look at what's the kid's name, JT, their running back.
Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. When you look at,
he's the same running back they've always had.
Right.
Changing his name.
Exactly. So, but when you look at a guy that's able to get that level of productivity, you got to look at the fat kids up front and what they're doing, and they've historically have just been mauling guys. O State does a decent job of that. But with that being said, I think because you have such a talent with their running back and their quarterback, they don't necessarily have to hold their blocks as long because those guys are hitting the holes, and they're already in fifth gear by the time they take their third step.
So, I mean, one thing about modern spread offenses is that is often the case where you have more room, so you don't have to maintain those blocks. So maybe it's more about you're prioritizing,
like I said,
consistency of execution.
I think a lot of it has to do with the blocking schemes in which they are being coached up on. Not really. I can't speak on that intelligently because I'm not there.
Sure.
So I can only go off of that, which what I know and what I've seen. But with that being said, when you look at us in our run game, and the last game I want to say against Sparty, we only had like 84 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Something like it was under 100 yards. So these are the things that concern me, because if we're only getting 84 yards against that particular team, that particular defense, what happens when we start playing those top tier schools? So I'm always going to gauge us upon the best competition, not just the people that we played against today. And I think that's where so many people are getting caught up and lost in drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will, is that, oh, we're doing this, and we 10 win season, all this other stuff. But who did we play? What was that level of competition? What happened in the Big Ten that particular year? So again, it's like being Minnesota playing in the West. Who's in the West?
Well, I mean, the thing is about Michigan State, they approach that how I want them to approach it. They're throwing the ball, and if you're throwing the ball against Michigan State, you're going against Trey Person. If you run the ball, you're going against Raekwon Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that you want to play championship football, you want to be able to beat Raekwon Williams as well, but I mean, you also just want to beat the pants off of Michigan State. Throw it at Trey Person.
So again, I'm looking at it from a player perspective, and everyone wants to put up these big, grotesque numbers, if you will. Everyone wants to put up basketball numbers, especially against your rivals. I get it, I respect it, but again, I'm always going to go back to what are these games doing to prepare you against better competition, and that's always going to be my question, because if we can't run the ball on Saturday, are we going to be proficient enough to get the passes downfield? Is Shea going to put the ball on the money? Are our receivers going to make those catches and do something with the ball after the fact? How are we going to set this up? What is going to be our level of adjustments that we're going to make? Are we going to start off with the run and hopefully suck everybody in, and then we spread things out and start throwing to we got some really good wide receivers, size-wise and capability. But, like I said, who of our wide receivers really gone up against this whole year as far as secondaries and put up proficient numbers?
Well, it's a difficult thing because a lot of college football teams, if you look at Alabama's record, they lost to LSU, and then who's their best win? It's probably, Texas A&M?
Right. Like I said, that was the whole thing with Bama. Who has Bama really played this year?
No.
So there's seems to be a lack of overall parity probably throughout all of college football. Every once in a while you see two great teams play each other, but when you go back to interdivisional play or conference play, if you will, there seems to be a lack of parity with the teams week in and week out. So it to me, it gives you a false sense of security as far as what you're really able to do out there on Saturdays, especially if you're not playing those top tier schools.
Yeah, and that's a question that you're always going to have, because now Michigan's schedule has Rutgers and Maryland on it every year instead of not those two schools. So there's always going to be.
I mean, against Indiana, they played a guy. I know he's a freshman, but they played a cornerback who's a dude. And
I mean,
they were putting the ball. Yeah, Mullins, right?
It's just Mullen with an N.
Mullen.
No S.
All right. Either way, we're putting the ball right over. I mean, I know that Shea has not been on point, and Brian, you've charted him lower than people think that he's even played. But
I mean, they only really hit Mullen on that Peoples-Jones touchdown, and then the rest of the week, the rest of the day, they were just throwing at everybody else.
Right.
And it's just Nico Collins, and guys in press coverage doesn't get a chuck, and then he's done. So his point's correct. Michigan is going to come up against Ohio State, and even though, Ohio State's number 2 and 3 corners aren't out of this world, they're much less of a soft spot than a lot of the other teams Michigan's played. So
then, speaking of all of that, is Shea even going to have time?
Well, I mean, that's what the hope is with the RPO stuff, is that you can deal with Chase Young by making him defend the run while you throw the ball.
So as I'm going back, and I forgot the guy's name, but he was talking about how Chase approaches the game and some of the things in which he does. And I've been saying this since I've been watching him, and everybody's been, blowing this up. Great athlete, great talent, high motor, from everything which I'm hearing, awesome work ethic. But yet again, when I sit back and I watch the tackles that he's playing against, very poor technique. You'll have tackles that'll take their pass set, and Chase is really good and active with his hands. And, once he'll chop that outside arm, boom, you're off balance. Because he's so fast, you end up getting ran around. Saw one tackle, I want to say it was against Penn State, doesn't post his hand out there. So when Chase goes to, swipe the hand away, but because he's so fast, he's bending that corner, but because you didn't put hands on him, and now you're giving up that soft outside shoulder, you've basically what we used to call opening up the gate. You gave that soft outside shoulder, thusly shortening the path to the quarterback for that defensive end. What I would personally like to see would be some of the stuff that we did when we had to play a guy like Simeon Rice. Simeon and Chase are two different body types, but as far as their overall athleticism, I would definitely probably put them on par. Guys like that, you have to pound them. You have to run at them. You got to understand they're going to make their plays. It is what it is. But going back to what I said earlier, probably around that quarter to halfway through that third quarter, when you continually have been running at this guy, and he's got to carry these 600-plus pounds, 700 pounds, play after play after play, eventually he's going to slow down.
Okay, but if you go 3 and out all the time.
It's not even a point about going 3 and out. I think you have to do it in an imaginative enough sort of way that you're getting positive yardage on the play. You can't run away from it. I think across the board with their defensive front seven that they have enough athletes. I question our ability to get up to the second level and to get on blocks and sustain blocks. I'm questioning our ability to actually open up holes. When you go back and you look at the run game, when you look at Zach, I like Zach. Okay, Zach set the record for freshman touchdowns or whatever. Fine. Zach's not a home run hitter. Zach at best will give you a triple. I like Haskins because Haskins plays with a level of physicality, but he's got good bursts. Zach, to me, is more of a straight line runner. It takes him a little bit to get going, so when things kind of get clogged up in the middle there, from what I've been watching over the season, Zach's running into the back of linemen a lot. He's not necessarily punching a lot of things.
And we saw that against Indiana a little bit, too, that Haskins kind of took over the number one job.
There's no doubt.
Well, in that game, Michigan didn't get a lot of backside blocks, so people were getting run down from the back. And when that happens, I think running backs get sped up a little bit because they don't have the time to downshift, see what the blocking does in front of them because they're going to get run down by a linebacker from behind. So that was the thing that there were a couple runs that Michigan was about to break it, and then that Ziemba kid would just because they would run a stunt on the backside and Michigan wouldn't pick it all up. And so you'd have guys who normally I'm not even grading those blocks because I just take them for granted, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh.
Well, I mean, that was my scouting on Indiana. They're papering over a lot of their issues by doing tricks like that.
They do, and that was the thing which I was looking at, going into the Indiana game was their level of movement as far as their stunts, their delayed blitzes. They disguise some things. They come at you with a lot of funky angles, things of that nature. So I definitely felt like that was going to be an issue for us as far as just being able to pick a lot of that stuff up. You kill a lot of that just with, to me, gap blocking. And, you go down and because either you're going to stunt out of it or somebody's going to stunt into it. Mm-hmm. And so as long as you're in the right position, taking that right angle, if it goes away from you, you best believe something else is going to come back around. And then you put the pause on them and you do what you do.
Yeah, and that's been not a particularly common tactic for Michigan this year. They had a lot of gap stuff against Maryland, but except for a bunch of pin and pull, it's pretty much been zone stuff.
It's been a lot of zone stuff. And again, I'm okay with zone, but our zone is always going east and west instead of at least at that 45-degree angle where I'm at least taking guys and driving them off the ball. We have a tendency of getting strung out on a lot of things. I sit back and I watch Caesar on a lot of his blocks, on combo blocks with Bredesen and Onwenu. Caesar has a tendency, and I don't know if this is what they're being taught. I kind of sort of think it is just because I'm seeing a lot of centers in the league doing it. It's just position blocking. The guard would come off chip, Caesar comes around, and he kind of, swings his butt into the hole.
Yeah.
So the caveat behind that is I swung my butt in the hole, so I'm now separating you from the hole or the back. but I've now just constricted the hole. If I get movement and I take you and I put you into the second level up to the linebacker, I've cleaned all this up for my running back. I've now given him options. So I'm always going to go back to you block the down lineman first, but take him off the line of scrimmage. The position blocking thing is fine, I guess, if that's what they're coaching. But if I'm a one technique or a three technique worth my salt, once I see you do that, all I need to do then is, if I'm playing with lower pad level, I now turn into the offensive lineman. That turns into a drive block. And I use you to constrict the hole and let the rest of the boys come in and make the tackle.
And that's something that we've seen a fair amount of this year. I was going into this year expecting that I would have some big run grades for Cesar Ruiz, and that really hasn't transpired.
Not at all.
And it's not that he's necessarily a bad player, because as we mentioned, like, Michigan's pass protection has been pretty much flawless since the
It's been better. I won't say flawless, but it's been better.
I mean,
it's been better than last year. It has taken incremental.
So you got to think about where they were 2 years ago.
I get it, and like I said, it's been better, but there are some things in which I'm looking at, especially from my tackles.
Okay, the tackles have some issues on a game-to-game basis.
I thought Mayfield had a pretty rough game against Indiana.
So, Mayfield has this thing where once or twice or three times a game he'll get beat such that the guy gets around at 9 yards. He's still attached. Quarterback has to move.
Right.
He's a redshirt freshman. Like
I don't make excuses for that. And again, I'm not here to toot my own horn.
Yeah.
A lot of us played at redshirt as redshirt freshmen.
Were you good as a redshirt freshman?
Hey, I started the rest of the season. I started against Ohio State as a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, did you play well?
I had a great game and we won.
All right, good.
You had Ty Wheatley running behind you too.
Like I said,
helps.
but this was back in the day when they had Big Daddy Wilkinsons and all those guys and all those those heralded names down south. But and again, I'm not saying that to toot my horn. I'm saying that I'm not a fan of making excuses. I'm a fan of, this is a standard, this is the expectation. You honor the position, you honor the number that you're wearing.
Can you tell he played for Carr?
Well, and that makes complete sense as part of a football program.
Yeah.
But like, if I'm looking at offensive linemen, and I notice that the older ones are always better than the younger ones, then I'm going to make some allowances for the fact that Mayfield's a redshirt freshman.
I'm going to go back to and not necessarily look at that young man in particular. I'm going to go back and question, what are we not doing as far as player development?
Well, there's a lot that we haven't been doing as far as player development.
And we can write volumes on that. Everyone talked about Ed Warner coming in, being this O-lineman guru, so to speak. And I take nothing away from Coach Warner. I don't know the guy. I'm not down at the building. Again, I'm just going off what I see on Saturday. I'm not necessarily seeing the return on investment for what we did to go out to go get this particular coach in this huge turnaround that's supposed to have been made. I'm not seeing what a lot of people don't understand as far as offensive line play goes. It's a team within a team. It's the only group of guys that's on the field where everybody has to do their job, or the play either doesn't work or it doesn't work as effectively as it should have if you have that breakdown within that 5-man chain. And so when I go back and I'm looking at, even guys that played after me, I sit back and I watch the national championship team. These guys were on. Everybody was in that groove. I don't really feel like we're in that groove. I don't really feel like our offensive line has an identity. O-line historically here at this great institution has been the attitude setter for the team. I remember, going through summer workouts and all this other stuff with Mike Gittleson. Everything we did, O-line was first. Everything. We got ready to go play Penn State, and I watched those 5 guys walk to the line of scrimmage on that first play. Unacceptable. Unfreaking acceptable. These are the things which I'm talking about as far as the attitude goes. The physicality, the physical part of the game, I have no concerns like these guys can do it. I question what happens from the neck up.
All right. Well, you have any predictions for this weekend?
Predictions as far as score, just to win.
Well, just whatever you want.
Okay, so I'm more comfortable with saying that I predict that Michigan wins, because I'm always going to predict that.
All right.
I don't care what the score is. I'm hoping that the weather plays a factor in the game. I know O-State's quarterback is not necessarily he's not a Midwest guy. I think he's from somewhere down south, I think. I'm hoping that we can use the elements to our advantage. I'm looking at us to find a way to keep everything close, and I think whatever happens, we'll win by 3.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
We got to get to another break.
Thomas, thank you very much.
Yeah.
This is Matt Demrest, the owner of Homeshore Lending. We're a local mortgage company here to help you purchase with confidence and refinance with ease. People don't get mortgages very often, so it can be confusing. We'll break down every single line item so that it all makes sense. And at the end of the day, if we're not giving you the best deal, we'll tell you to go with the other company. We're here to offer our simple mortgage guidance.
This is Seth Fisher from MGoBlog. Over the years, we've sent dozens of readers to use Homeshore Lending, and every review that's come back has been raving. I myself used them to refinance after doing our original loan through our bank. I was amazed how much smoother the process was for our complicated loan. Brian used them, you should use them too.
Finding out whether it makes sense or not to refinance or getting pre-approved to buy a new home is easy. Head over to homeshorelending.com, that's HOMESURE, lending.com/MGoBlog to find out more. Or call us at 734-531-9950. That's 734-531-9950. I've got 2 of my favorite people here with me, kind of an annual tradition, Cooper and Colby. Cooper, how old are you?
11.
Colby, how about you?
9.
Can I get a Go Blue?
Go Blue!
NMLS number 116135, Equal Housing Lender.
It can be a rough ride along the information superhighway. That's why we build our e-commerce websites tough enough to handle the load. With the capacity to take hundreds of simultaneous online transactions and the stability of load-balanced, co-located server architectures, a website from Human Element performs in the roughest conditions. Thousands of products? No problem. We'll throw in the tools to manage them with precision and efficiency. All with a design slick enough to make you think your girlfriend might be impressed. So load it up and hit the gas and let Human Element show you the way. Special offers available for returning licensees. Financing available with approved credit to qualified buyers. Client participation may affect savings. Optional equipment available at additional cost. See human-element.com for details.
Let me just tell you a couple things to keep in your mind while you're out there. When we take the field, we're going to win. We've got big goals. We've got big ideas. We've got to win this game, and there is no game on the remainder of our schedule more important than the one you're going down to the tunnel to play today. Now let's go. Let's go.
Underground Printing is proud to present the Bow Store. Visit us at our new location at 333 South Main or online at www.bow.team.
If you find yourself on the wrong side of the law in Ann Arbor or around Metro Detroit, you want a Michigan man in the huddle. Call former prosecutor and now criminal defense attorney Jonathan Paul at 248-924-9458 or visit his website, michiganlawgrad.com.
Here's a thing people say. Seth, tell me about your insurance.
I'm actually glad you asked me about that because I just changed my insurance, and I'm really happy I did.
Let me guess. You use Phil Klein and Owen Rosen of the Phil Klein Insurance Group.
They are MGoBlog readers, and they don't advertise during football games.
And they've got a 5-star rating on anything you would care to see. Call Owen at 248-682-7445 or visit them online at philkleininsurance.com. Welcome back to MGoRadio 5.12 live from the Bow Store on Main Street. Kind of had a conversation that didn't quite cover anything about the Indiana game, so we're going to talk about that.
I kept on bringing it to the Indiana game.
I know. We're going to do that very quickly and then move on to this weekend's game. So Indiana's early success on offense was a bunch of dinks. Michigan was playing pretty deep at safety for much of the game, which didn't make a bunch of sense to me. But can't really argue with the overall results.
Yeah, I mean, I understood it because Indiana likes to either chuck it deep or dink you, and they'll chuck it deep early and then just turn to their dink game. So I think they were just kind of like ready for that, and then as soon as Indiana transitioned to what they always do, they're like, okay, here we come.
And then a couple of chunk plays came on the first couple of drives, first 3 drives, at the expense of Dax Hill. Hill got hit with a corner on the first play from scrimmage. Didn't switch on the wheel route on their 3rd down.
And everyone's covered the fact that they talked to each other like mid-play during that
Yeah. So it's a situation where freshman, first start,
right,
a little bit leaky early. Really locked it down after that. Also had the interception on the 2nd drive. Promising start, but you kind of have, he feels like a 5-star freshman in his first start. So that's a large chunk of what's responsible for their early success. And then as soon as Michigan clamps down on their dink game, just puts them in anything approximating a passing down. Josh Uche's off the edge. Kwity Paye's off the edge. Aiden Hutchinson's off the edge, and that's the end of their drive. So,
and Michigan did not respect their interior line, which I was happy with my scouting when I watched the game again the second time, because I was watching to see like if Michigan's defensive line was going to like hang up, and they really just kind of went with Kemp and Kwity and Aiden and just beat them.
Yeah, and there's some argument that some of Indiana's early success was because, for instance, Kalik Hudson was coming down a little bit too far in case there was a run, like just kind of respecting the Stevie Scott aspect of the Indiana offense a little bit too much. And then once they realized that the front 6 has it, that made their bubble game a lot more difficult to actually execute. On offense, more interesting, because that was a Shea Patterson that we hadn't seen in a while. I think I had him for 8 DOs, which is a lot.
Right.
And like I might have, given him one on like the Bell corner route that's like on the borderline. But when you lay it directly in your wide receiver's hands for a touchdown in the red zone, that's a throw that's harder than a lot of people appreciate. I'm going to bring out the DO.
And they've been spending all year trying to get the ball to Bell in that situation. So
Yeah.
hooray.
So he's able to hit Collins repeatedly downfield. He hits Peoples-Jones downfield. The situation with his injuries earlier in the year, there's a story you could tell about how he has been suffering all year, finally got healthy, and is now going to be the flame-throwing Shea Patterson we all wanted to see this year. You could tell yourself that if you wanted to.
I mean, the story that it seems to me is that like he's allowed to keep against Michigan State and Notre Dame, and other than that, he's got to make it to Ohio State.
Well, I mean, I'm not even talking about anything on the ground, but just in terms of like how accurate is he? How does he feel in terms of like, okay, we got to beat Ohio State. Can we beat Ohio State with that? Against Indiana, for the first time in a long time, I felt the answer was yes.
Well, so there is a story about the transition cost that I think is correct. That they slapped a read on everything. At least Gaddis said so. And a lot of times it didn't seem like they were doing that. But like I think in this game you saw Shea executing a lot, and they're mostly RPO reads. They weren't like handoff or keeper reads.
There was one zone read in the whole game.
Right. So but he's doing a lot of RPO reads, and they're doing more interesting RPO things. This is what I deck sharpied afterwards. Yeah. And I think you covered that one too in the post UFR. That like.
Well, this game, like I'd been talking about, like, all right, I gotta have some RPO grading in UFR. And this game was finally like, all right, I gotta do it for this game, because you couldn't talk about what was going on with Michigan's offense without doing that.
Right.
So I had them for 10 different RPOs, and I probably missed a half dozen more, just because I'm new at it.
And it's not always easy to tell what's an RPO, especially if Michigan disguises them purposely.
Well. It's not that hard to see wide receivers blocking or
but like
running past red downfield.
Yeah.
So I thought Patterson was 8 of 10 on those, and that's really encouraging because it felt like earlier in the season he just wasn't able to make those reads consistently. And we saw, a safety charge up to the line of scrimmage, and so we're going to throw a hitch to Collins, that kind of thing. Not the standard, we're going to run a slant.
But that was great because, first of all, it messes with a different guy than Indiana thinks they're messing with.
Yeah, I mean, you're if you move the RPO guy around, it's difficult for Indiana to come up with a consistent way to defeat it. And those throws get out so quick that, I don't know, a guy like Chase Young has difficulty having an impact on the play. So that's going to be Michigan's I think, best hope on offense.
I mean, yeah, one more thing is because I did this in my article was that like Indiana, when they came down the first time when Michigan threw that RPO, Indiana's safety comes right down the hash marks.
Yeah.
Second time they run it, same exact setup, and he comes down about 4 or 5 feet outside the hash marks because he thinks he needs to be helpful on the comeback, and that's when they hit him with the Giles Jackson wheel. So that they have a PA which looks like their RPO action, which is kind of like that's the modern ball that we thought Gaddis was going to be installing.
Yeah, and it does feel like they've connected their run game to their pass game. They've made the run game closer to what it was last year. It's decently effective. They're still like it's not a ground game that is going to be the ground game of your dreams, but it works together as an offense. So encouraging stuff from Michigan. Now, they're going to play Ohio State this weekend.
I believe that is on the schedule.
If you look at any metric that purports to rank football teams based on their quality, they're number one in the country by a long shot. They're close to historically good. Like there's an Alabama team that's up there with them.
Yeah, any team that's ever been under 10 in S&P Plus defense is like because I remember checking this when Michigan was getting into historical levels, and that's exactly where they are right now, and they're doing it the same way Michigan did last year.
They've been real good, and Michigan has a mountain to climb, and I think that they've acknowledged this, and we've seen them build their offense in such a way as that we think we can get away with this against Chase Young. Like, I mean, if you look at the Indiana game plan, that looks like a dry run for what they're going to have to do. Because, I mean, you're grading for Chase Young across 2 games. He was plus 50 on the ground.
Something like plus 47.5 or something.
So I think it's clear that our scales don't quite match up. Because for a player to be plus 25 on the ground.
Well,
I'm
counting pass rushing in there too.
Okay,
I'm not trying. These are one-offs. I'm not trying to fill everything up perfectly.
So
but,
he's a guy who
he's getting plus 3 pass rushes all over the place.
Right, and you have to deal with him on the ground as well. He's not a one-dimensional guy. Like Josh Uche is a guy who you're hoping can come through on any particular rush down and have a nice play, which he's done a little bit.
Yeah.
Chase Young isn't like that. Chase Young
can set an edge against 3 linemen and just not move. But now, keep in mind, too, I did kind of pick 2 teams that have not great offensive tackles. Like, Will Freeze is not anyone's idea of a good offensive tackle unless you're a Penn
State. Then you did the Michigan State game?
And then I did the Michigan State game because I didn't respect Michigan State enough to actually scout Michigan State's offense. So I was like, I'll get some Ohio State work in while I'm at this.
I see. You did the Michigan State game for Michigan State.
Yeah.
I see. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And paid more attention to Ohio State because I was like, I've seen the Brian Lewerke offense all year. I don't need to see this much more other than, like, technically.
So when Michigan does drop back to pass downfield, which they're going to have to do some of, it's about risk factor.
Right.
And it's about can you get away with it? And you can't get away with it. I mean, Chase Young's pass rush win rate this year is 30%, which is great. It's amazing.
Uh-huh.
But it's not like doom every play. And if you look at the rest of Ohio State's pass rush, you know, they have 45 sacks on the season. 17 of those are from Chase Young. Linebackers chip in. And they have other guys make plays, but if you go and you drill down, like, you know, Davon Hamilton's 4 sacks. 2 of them are against Rutgers, 2 of them are against Maryland. Well, one of them is against Maryland. You know, if you look at their other defensive end, name escapes me.
It's Smith.
He's a guy who has chips in a little bit of rush here and there. Like, I think
all of their stats are coming because of Chase Young.
Right. So but I think, you know, Michigan can really afford to focus on Young and then just rely on their excellent interior pass protection this year.
Robert Landers is going to get under somebody because that's who he is. But he's also small, so sometimes you bash him out of there.
Is he going to get under Ben Bredesen? Is he going to get under Mike Onwenu?
He gets his against everybody.
For a pass rush?
He's a good pass rusher. Robert Landers is a damn good player. I wish he'd come and played for Michigan.
Well,
he reminds me of all those Bo Schembechler, undersized, or Rob
In any
Remus.
case,
That's what he is.
You're just going to live with that.
Yeah.
If he's able to burrow into the backfield like nobody else has this season, including Robert Windsor, okay.
Yeah.
And you're just going to focus all your effort on Chase Young and hopefully get enough time to hit some downfield shots to make sure that either the defense loosens up a little bit or you're taking advantage of the fact that they're creeping up to stop your RPO game. That is a vaguely plausible path to scoring some points.
Yeah, I mean,
and then you have the option of just doing the 2015 Ole Miss, where it's like, well, we can't do anything, but we do have DK Metcalf.
And there you are. And they have one corner, Jeffrey Okudah, who everyone thinks is going to be a top 5 pick this year. And you can see it. He is incredibly talented.
There are other 2 cornerbacks, and they do start 3 cornerbacks that are explicitly 3 cornerbacks.
Yeah, like they call the strong safety a cornerback because he plays down in the nickel.
Right. So, I mean, they're an exclusively one high system, which has worked out very, very well for them. I still think that there's a little bit of a vulnerability there if they're married to this exact thing.
Jeez, I mean, where would Michigan fans get that idea?
Yeah. But Damon Arnett is not a great athlete.
No, he's not a terrible. I think he gets, he's playing for Ohio State, so he's getting compared to like Jeffrey Okudah.
Yeah, but like
if he was on Maryland, people would be like, "Oh, that little guy can run."
Well, I don't know. And then Sean Wade's a sophomore,
yeah,
who is playing pretty well. Their PFF grades are both in like the 74 to 72 range.
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah,
it's not great. So,
and they both got kind of flagged for a bunch of minuses. Arnett still has, I've sat with a cornerback before who like got really mad watching him play because like his back pedal's terrible. He's got his weight shifted in the wrong that guy still does like. It just seems like uncoached off the line, and he needs that.
So even if Okudah is on Nico Collins 1, you still got to try, right? And then I think that you might have enough of an advantage with Bell and Peoples-Jones on the other 2 guys that you could make some one-on-one victories happen.
I know this sounds insane, but I almost think you should go for Okudah because what they do is their one high safety is Jordan Fuller, and he's been around forever. But Fuller knows that he's playing on the Arnett side.
He's shading to the
He's
field.
always shading over there, and they just leave Okudah because who have they played? I probably should have given Cody White a star when I did the Michigan State one. And but I didn't.
No way.
I mean, I didn't give anyone a star on that team.
I mean, come on.
But like Cody White is a guy that like most people respect as a decent receiver, and he got his against Michigan too. But like he was completely shut down by Okudah.
Did he get his against Michigan? He had like a tunnel screen.
He got the one play against cover 1 that got them down to that got Michigan State their touchdown. Remember they had to like review it. That was his one play.
That's not.
He got his.
That's not getting his.
That's more than any Michigan State receiver has gotten since Aaron Burbridge.
I mean, that's the offensive coordinator getting an RPS win is what that is. But
anyway, Okudah shut him down all day, and Okudah can do that. But can he do that against Michigan's guys? Because he's going to be facing the first NFL-bound receivers that he's seen all season.
And, I think that the way that you win this game is by winning a lot of very stupid one-on-one battles because they're going to make Michigan face those. And Michigan has the personnel to win a number of those.
And Ohio State's entire defense is predicated on that. They play cover 1 or cover 3 every down. They rush 4 because why rush 5 when you got Chase Young already there?
Yeah.
And they're going to bring their linebackers down because they wanted to make things absolutely simple for them, which they started doing it against Michigan last year, and it made them instantly a lot better, but also a lot more exploitable. There's that second level now.
Right, and then it does kind of play into our hypothetical RPO game plan because those guys are a lot like Michigan State linebackers. Whenever they see run, they're all moving down.
Yep.
So...
And then Fuller's going to replace them. So then that leaves their cornerback in a one-on-one situation. Now he's going to replace them shaded to Arnett's side because that's the thing that they know they got to protect. But, that's why I'm thinking, like, Jeffrey Okudah is a really good player, and he's going to be facing some NFL guys, and there is no cornerback in the NFL who doesn't get beat sometimes by the NFL receivers.
Yeah. Could happen. Feel more optimistic than I feel like I should against a
you do that
team
every
with these
year.
stats. No, I mean, we're gonna lose this game, but I feel like it's going to be a game.
I mean, it's going to be shitty weather, and it's going to be.
It's not going to be as shitty as you want it to be. So
Well, I'm going to be in the stadium outside, so I might not want it to be.
I mean, but the approximate accumulation is going to be like 1/100 of an inch.
Okay.
So the amount of precipitation we're looking at is probably insignificant.
All right. So is it going to be enough to stop Justin Fields?
I don't know. I mean, the thing about Fields is they didn't run him a ton. You know, they ran him like 8 times a game, and then against Penn State, all the breaks came off.
Yep.
So he got 18 carries.
Their first big game except for Wisconsin.
Right. So he got 18 carries against Penn State. He also had 13 carries against Wisconsin.
Right.
18 carries against Penn State, but then in the final snap that he has on the game, he twists his ankle, and he's down for a while. He gets up. It looks not so great.
And every Ohio State fan's like stomach dropped out.
Yeah, well,
because his backup is just like a West Virginia transfer.
Thoughts and prayers to all the Ohio State fans in their time of need.
Devin Gardner kneeling down.
So, how healthy is Fields? There's been rumors that he hasn't been practicing, and he's broken a thumb.
We saw the thumb
We saw the
injury.
ankle issue.
Yeah.
So, like, it's in a normal situation, you'd go into this game and be like, yes, Fields is going to run 15 times, and it's just going to be incredibly difficult to contain these guys. In this situation, the play for Ohio State might be our backup went 4 of 14 against Rutgers. So maybe we're going to try to keep him upright. We're going to sacrifice some efficiency for our offense up front in case that our quarterback gets hurt. I mean, he might not even be able to move that well.
The hope here is that, like you said, that they've been game planning to like unleash him against Michigan.
Yeah.
And now, like that whole part of the offense has to get scrapped, and like an entire year of like hate Michigan hour that's been half of their practices because they've been playing Rutgers and Maryland and whatnot every week.
So the downside is that it might not even be that complicated. I know you didn't think that the Ohio State offensive line was gangbusters, but we are talking about a team that in their opening drive against Penn State, the purported number 1 rush defense in the country.
It was Justin Fields. They were pass rushing, and Justin Fields would get loose, knock a linebacker down, and then he runs for 20 yards.
That's not all of what happened. They're running a lot of tight zone.
They were the tight zone, by the way, is duo, which is the play that Michigan used to run.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know that it's duo, but the Ohio State term is tight zone. So they're they're running tight zone against guys like Robert Windsor and Carlo Kemp.
Yeah.
Mike Dwumfor.
They were not getting a lot with tight zone. They were not. Penn State was pretty much shutting down on zone reads.
All you have to do for tight zone is get 4 yards, and
they weren't getting 4 yards again. I mean, that was Penn State. They have better offensive tackles than we do, but they got shut down on that all the time. And then they get to 3rd and 8, and then Justin Fields would like do Terrell Pryor stuff. And
all right.
Penn State's got that linebacker who they've been Jan Johnson, who's been like he's a walk-on linebacker, and he's been good against everybody. But as soon as he got out in the field against Fields, he would get dodged, fall down on the ground because he is not that kind of caliber of athlete, and Fields would get 20 yards.
Well, that shouldn't be a problem with our walk-on linebacker.
No, because our walk-on linebacker is a class count.
And then you have
go and try it.
You have McGrone out there, and people have been talking about potentially spying Fields, and I don't think you can spend the guy.
No,
because given what Michigan's pass rush has been this year, you're talking about a team that has given up 1 or 2 scrambles per game, and not because they're not getting to the quarterback. They hit the quarterback more than anyone else in the country. It's just usually there's nowhere for the quarterback to go because they're playing essentially with 4 defensive ends on every snap.
Yeah.
And those guys have been extremely disciplined about maintaining their lanes. So I think you got to ride with that. Rush 4, rush 5 when you have to. Keep Fields contained and make him make throws against 6- and 7-man zones.
So, I mean, the way that they like to do things is they're going to spread guys out, and same thing with the defense. They're going to make you play one-on-one. And so they do a lot of that thing that we saw Florida do in the Peach Bowl last year, where they just go 5 wide.
Nobody remembers anything about the Peach Bowl.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, the same thing that Indiana does, except for they run Fields out of that formation.
I remember more about the Battle of Hastings than the Peach Bowl.
I am willing to make an entire podcast on the Battle of Hastings.
I'm aware of that. Nobody remembers the Peach Bowl.
Anyway,
but
they'll go empty and then use Fields as the runner, and then you have 5-on-5 because everyone's got to be out there in coverage. And Penn State had some interesting answers to that, but that is kind of what they want to do when they run with Fields, and that is how they move the ball against Penn State. So, I mean, they're going to isolate you and make you play, and I think that Michigan might have the guys to play with that because McGrone again is a much faster player than anybody that Ohio State's played against so far.
All right, do we have a feel? What is your prediction? Madness.
Terrible weather. We just got our butts whipped last year.
Yeah.
And
just last year. I don't remember any games before last year.
Yeah, and Ohio State is going to have their thing that they do, and they're going to be trying to stuck in what they do. So I don't know, it kind of feels like Michigan walked into Columbus last year. Hip hop, we're all awesome, and there's a plucky group of youngsters who can 1969 this thing, and it's not going to happen. We're going to lose 33-24 or something.
All right.
How about you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Arr. Thank you for Robin Wright. Thank you for Thomas Guynes. Thank you, Ryan, who just took off. And also thank you to our musical guests, the Seaweeds, our Minneapolis band made up of some Michigan expats, notably longtime reader Paul Sonda. Go Blue. Let's beat Ohio.
Who's got it better than us? Nobody!